We are live.
We're live. What's up, Z-Pack? Welcome to the show. We're doing something different today. We're doing a live show on a specific topic, heaven forbid, taking your questions. So instead of a free-for-all that we normally do where it's just chaos, we're actually going to have Victoria in the back there. Where is she? There she is. Is going to grab your comments, particularly if they are about any sort of meditative practice or questions that you have about meditation, because over the years, I've learned quite a bit about this. I'm still nowhere close knowing what I need to know, but I think I have enough understanding to at least have a discussion about it and how this general practice of introspection can help you, whether you're in healthcare or whether you're in life in general, and what kind of what it means and that sort of thing. The other thing I want to talk about quickly is you guys know we're a podcast too, right? Oh, Victoria, do me a favor. Hit record on that little gizmo down there or on the board so we can put this up if we need to on the podcast. Sweet. I always forget to record. You guys know this already about me, right? You know this about me. Is it recording?
We are recording.
We're recording. All right. So you guys know we're live on Facebook. Where are we now? YouTube?
We're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. We're live on YouTube, and we're taking questions about meditation, which is something that I've come to learn about over the years, and I'm learning more about every day. I think it's a very powerful introspective tool to help us in life, in healthcare, and beyond. Victoria, do we have any comments so far?
We do. Vixen would like to know why should I meditate?
Why should you meditate? Okay, so we can start with what meditation is, and it's simply turning your attention inwards to look at your experience. Second to second, minute to minute, moment to moment. That's the simplest way to think about meditation. It's taking an observational tool, a scientific tool, which is your mind, your attention, your ability to focus on something, and turning it towards your experience. Which, if you really think about it, it's what we do every day because everything is our experience. All we know is our experience, right? So meditation is really paying close attention to the nature of your own experience and the nature of your own mind. Why is it helpful? Because most of us, starting in early childhood, become conditioned. We're basically trained to ignore the actual raw experience around us, ignore the present moment. So we're conditioned to worry and regret about the past. We're conditioned to worry and fear the future and keep planning and keep thinking. We're stuck in our minds and in our thoughts, and we identify with our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings and our sensations instead of understanding that we are actually the condition in which all those things arise. All those things are transient. They come and go. You can't grasp onto them. And the process of meditation is to look inward at your own experience and understand its nature so that you can actually live a life that is less encumbered by suffering and by what I call an identity crisis. By misidentifying with your feelings, your emotions, your sensations, your worries, your thoughts, and instead identifying with the consciousness, the awareness in which all these thoughts and feelings and emotions arise. So the simplest, most of the scientific studies that have been done now, and there's an increasing volume of literature, show the benefits of different types of meditation, whether it's being less reactive, whether it is sleeping better, whether it's increased senses of well-being, whether it's lowering blood pressure and physical manifestations. And there's increasing evidence on fMRI, functional MRI and stuff, that there are real lasting brain changes in advanced meditators and even in casual meditators. This is a field that is now burgeoning. It's being co-opted by like corporations and stuff. Hey guys, we're just like, it's been called McMindfulness, right? And so we're trying to take that back and say, okay, what are the tools you can actually use to make yourself less of an asshole? That's basically what it is. What do we got?
All right. Gisette Williams says,
Gisette, what up? Wakanda forever.
How do you use meditation with PTSD?
Okay, how do you use meditation with PTSD? So this is an important thing to discuss. And the reason is that since meditation to some degree involves turning inward, and paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions as they arise, to sensations, perceptions as they arise. If you've had an event that has created a trauma that now is sort of indelibly etched in your mind system. So there's some unconscious part of your mind that keeps feeding back this traumatic situation and generating the same or worse fear response and panic response and the sort of maladaptive responses. In meditation, even in people who've never had PTSD or had that sort of thing, it is not uncommon for, as we pay attention and as the mind, as the chattering mind starts to quiet. So through practice, what you find is the mind gives up trying to be an asshole all the time, and the higher levels start to calm. And when that happens, your ego becomes a little bit, what's a good word? It's destabilized a bit. So in other words, it's no longer throwing up the usual defenses that it's very good at to protect itself from repressed, unconscious sort of content. And what ends up happening is this stuff starts to arise. And it may manifest in someone with PTSD, you know how it manifests, right? Because you've experienced it. In someone without PTSD, it manifests as strong emotions that a lot of times seem inexplicable. So there were times in my meditative path when I got really good at this Vipassana type of meditation using this book called The Mind Illuminated, which I highly recommend. People have asked me what meditation books I recommend. That one is at the top of the list because it's written by a scientist who happens to also be a adept meditator, and breaks it down with neurological models, with proposed models that rely on sort of ancient Buddhist thought, but are entirely secular, and also informed by neuroscience, so the latest neuroscience. So it's actually really, really great. It's a handbook, and it goes through the 10 stages of meditative sort of attainment. And I was at stage 4 or something, and in stage 4, you're able to really start to suppress the distractions that many people will say, I can't meditate because my mind is so distracted. That's the reason you meditate, is that you watch those distractions arise, and you realize by watching your mind how chaotic, how chattering, how much of an asshole your mind really is, because it's always trying to hijack your attention, to worry about something, to plan about something, to think about something, to regret something. That's what the mind does. And it's incredibly successful at helping us survive, right? But now we're in a world where actually there's a lot of stuff that is in place that can keep us alive. We don't need to worry about every little thing. And in fact, it's maladaptive now because it prevents us from accomplishing stuff. So when you start to quiet the chattering mind through practice, and you're not trying to suppress thoughts, you're just starting to learn to let them go. And as that happens, the unconscious little subminds that are feeding up that chatter start to shut the fuck up because they realize, well, no one's listening to us. It's like a kid. When you ignore them enough, they just stop bothering you. So if they're exhibiting a behavior that you want to eliminate, that's the nature of a timeout. So meditation in a way of kind of giving your mind a timeout and going, you know what? Oh, I see you there. Go sit in the corner and do that. Yeah, you're still doing it. You're still doing it. Oh, look, you've stopped. When that chatter starts to die down, interesting things happen. So you have this beautiful meditative experience that's punctuated by very strong emotional content arising. So you may just suddenly find yourself really upset or really angry or really hurt or really defensive, or something will happen, and it might follow you throughout the day. And that's this unconscious material being allowed to rise up. Now, the great meditation teachers will tell you this is a great chance to address that because it's been repressed, right? And your conscious mind shuts it down so that you don't have to deal with it. Maybe it was some childhood trauma, maybe it was something that happened recently, but they start to arise. And then sometimes you'll actually get images come up about, oh, wow, I'd forgotten that happened, or I didn't realize that happened to me, or something like that. And then you have a chance to actually use your meditation to help you. And the way you do that, and it's a kind of a purification process, it's a kind of a 10 years of therapy and a few meditation sessions, you can actually get that experience. Stuff arises and you go, oh, there it is. This anger or this hurt or this guilt or whatever this is, that's been there. And it has a right to be there because something happened, right? Like I was exposed to something happened. And there it is manifesting. And I can watch it. I can experience it. I can feel it without identifying with it. And I can have a distance and go, okay, this is this is allowed to be here. It's welcome to be here, but it's not who I am now. And this is not what I am. This memory is not me, right? I am me in the current moment. I can be an entirely new me. And so maybe it's time to appreciate this, feel it, and let it go, and keep doing that. And maybe it involves getting on the phone and calling the person who hurt you or whatever it is, right? Sending them an email and going, I never told you this, but X. And I found myself doing that in meditation. So the first person asked, why should I meditate? It's a pretty good reason. Gisette asked, what about PTSD? Well, with PTSD, it's tricky because these feelings can be overpowering. At the same time, the treatment for PTSD is not avoiding triggers. It is processing the original experience and the triggers so that they no longer have control over you. And at this point, you really need a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist to be with you on this, because it can be a destabilizing experience without help. Meditation, just like psychedelics or anything like that, can be. What do we got?
Carlizette asks, any tips on how to relax and not freak out over finals week?
Any tips on how to relax and not freak out over finals week? So some degree of anxiety is very normal when you're taking tests. The freaking out component is often, and this goes for any sort of anxiety, depression, so these strong mental perturbations. And I'm not talking about sadness, right? Or fear. A lot of times sadness and fear are responses to something that's legit. And you can deal with that without getting into a pattern. And you can think of it this way. Depression is pathologic and repetitive sadness. Sadness in itself is just a transient emotion, a feeling that you get in response to some stimulus. And in meditation, you can feel sad, right? Without being sad. You're not lost and identified in sadness and stuck in a loop. Depression, though, is a different thing, all right? And let's talk about that in a second. So anxiety is pathologic fear or worry. It's taking something that's transient in response to a stimulus and making it long-term, repetitive, and detrimental. And both of those things have to do with, again, how we respond and identify to emotion. So if you're talking about finals week, right, you're worried, oh, shit, what's the root worry? The root worry is you're going to flunk, you're not going to perform well, you're not going to get to the next level in your training, you're not going to get that, job or that residency or whatever it is you're training to do, right? And that fear then becomes chronic or worsening anxiety, or freaking out, as you call it, right? But at the root of anxiety, chronic bad anxiety, and depression is distorted thinking. It's incorrect and distorted thought patterns. And so think about this. Anxiety, fear is one thing. I'm nervous about this test because there's a lot at stake. Great. You can feel that. This is where it becomes distorted. If I don't do well on this test, my entire life is over. Okay, that's called all or nothing thinking. That's called catastrophizing. These are the names of the thought distortions. And this is how you think in cognitive behavioral therapy. You try to name the thought distortions and then argue with it and go, well, actually, wait a minute. What's the worst thing that happens? I fail the test. Is that going to destroy my life? No, because my life is not just academics. There's a lot of things that go into my life. And you can actually talk yourself out of the distorted thinking, but you have to find the thought, recognize it, be mindful of it, write it down. So this gets back to meditation. Meditation is a great way to become mindful, meaning aware of things that normally happen that you're not aware of. You unconsciously identify with your fear. You unconsciously catastrophize and use all or nothing thinking. And now you're, quote unquote, freaking out. Pathologic anxiety. That can be aborted early on when you recognize, oh shit, I have a test. Oh my God. Wait a minute. I'm a decent person. The worst thing that happens is I don't do well on the test. I can fix that eventually. Not the end of the world. How can I make my fear a little less? Let me study. I'll do the best I can. And what happens, happens. So that is the root of the practice of mindfulness and meditation, is recognizing thoughts as thoughts, seeing what your mind is doing. And then cognitive behavioral therapy is then starting to alter the trajectory of that by recognizing specific distortions in your thought and changing your thinking. You can do that. And imagine depression, anxiety, you can start to manage those, including things like PTSD, because you can look at the root triggers and go, okay, no, I'm safe now. I'm safe now. Let me think about the thought pattern here. All these feelings have a right to be there. So you don't criticize yourself. You don't self-blame, but you start working to try to change the distorted thought patterns. It's hard, and the help of a therapist can be invaluable, or really good books actually too can help a lot. What we got?
Katie Hoek asks, how long should we meditate? I'm at 20 to 30 minutes a day. It's tricky to create more time in the day. What do you recommend?
How long should we meditate in that 20, 30 minutes? How do we create more time in the day? Is that what she's saying?
Yes.
Yeah. This is one of the top questions is, how do I carve out time? How much time do I need? Okay. So Sam Harris's app, which is a great way to start meditating, start at 10 minutes a day. You can find 10 minutes a day. And if you think you can't, it means that there's some distortion in your thinking about how you're managing your day. There's something that can be eliminated that you think is essential that isn't. So find 10 minutes and start with that. I ultimately worked myself up to about an hour a day. And then what I found? So, and this is the thing, that hour, let's say, okay, my God, an hour. How the hell do you find an hour? Well, I get up earlier and I try to go to bed a little earlier. And if I can't, I would go without a little bit of sleep. Not ideal, but that's how I did it. There are better ways to do it, which is try to be more efficient during the day, eliminate activities that aren't helping you. But in that hour, I found so many powerful tools to help the rest of my day be less shitty, that I found that the efficiency in the rest of my day was improved. My suffering went down. A lot of different things happened. Now, one caveat of that, which I talked about earlier, is this idea that you can unmask a lot of unconscious material, and that can make your day difficult if you don't address it. So I went through that as well, where I was irritable and stuff. The more I meditated, my team knew when I was meditating, because I would be super irritable that day and very snippy, because there was some unconscious anger or something that I was denying that I had that was manifesting, right, and hadn't been addressed. So you will find that time, it's like, why do you exercise? You don't exercise for the 30 minutes you're on the treadmill, right? You exercise for how it makes you feel the rest of the day, how it improves your sense of self-worth, how it improves your energy and your mood and your sleep. That's why you find the time to meditate. It's simple as that. Once you make it a practice and you're diligent about it and you set intention, because intention is the key to meditation. You have to set an intention. This is what I intend to do. And that generates a momentum of your whole mind system to try to do it. Without the intention, it will be the first thing you drop when shit hits the fan. And it actually should be the last thing you drop when shit hits the fan. What we got?
So Gabe Butrell asks, any favorite meditation apps?
My favorite meditation app is Sam Harris's Waking Up app, which costs money. For me, it doesn't cost money because I was a supporter of Sam's on Patreon a long time ago. There are other apps like Headspace. I use Insight Timer as well to time my meditation and keep a log of how many hours I'm meditating, because it helps gamify it a little bit for me, and also gives me a good sense of, oh, look, I didn't meditate this week. What happened this week? What was the reason? Let me be mindful of what went down. Oh, I was really busy and I made excuses and I didn't do it. Okay, well, next time I'll try to do better. By the way, one thought pattern that you can start to recognize with mindfulness is amazing, has been great for me, because I find this, and everybody's different, right? So I'm driven by a sense of fairness, justice a little bit. It's an unconscious thing. It might've been from being beaten up as a kid. Who knows what it is. So I'm always tuned into the shoulds. Man, this person should be doing this, or this person should have gotten, that, or why is this person should be treating me like this? This sort of should mind that I think David Burns, who wrote the book Feeling Good about cognitive behavioral therapy, talks about, the should mind. This idea that people should be behaving this certain way, that situations should be this way. I put in all the work in meditation. I should be feeling better, right? The should mind is a poison. It's a distorted thought pattern. Why should you? Why should they? The way to reframe that is you recognize you're doing it. You realize the only person it's causing suffering to is you. And you reframe it as, it'd be nice if the garbage guys would come at a different hour instead of always interrupting my show. That'd be nice. Yeah, it's not going to happen, so I'm going to let it go. Or it'd be nice if, the accountant told me in advance that the taxes were due instead of surprising me at the last minute. Maybe I'll give them a call and just say, hey, it'd be nice if this is something that could happen. Instead of stewing on it or calling angry, you're an accountant, you should be doing this and that. Why? That's not going to change anything. The should mind is a poison. What do we got? I don't even remember what the question was now. I went off the rails.
Jody Chance asks, how's meditation different than self-hypnosis? She does self-hypnosis as a stress management tool right now.
So I didn't, it's interesting because I don't know much about hypnosis, except that I'm convinced that it does work, because I think that with hypnosis, what you're doing is you're reconditioning or accessing the so-called unconscious sub-minds that are feeding us information. Those minds I actually believe are conscious in and of themselves, but we can't access that consciousness. Hypnosis is a way of turning off the higher centers and accessing the lower centers. So how is meditation different than self-hypnosis? Hypnosis is, at least if it's got an end to it, it's goal-directed. So you're saying, I want to do this better, or I want to stop psyching myself out about this, or I want to whatever your reason to self-hypnotize is. What meditation can be a kind of hypnosis, right? Because you're accessing unconscious material. What meditation says is, I'm going to accept everything that arises in my conscious awareness, but I'm going to accept it non-judgmentally and let it go and pay attention to it and be mindful, be aware of what my mind is doing. That's not what necessarily hypnosis does. So it's a very different approach. It's a broader approach. It's I believe, a more inclusive approach, and it's something that so this is a pivot right here, right? So once you're mindful, in other words, once you're able to concentrate enough to be able to watch your mind and see what it's doing, at that point, you can start to do directed meditations, which are a kind of hypnosis. The biggest one, the most important one, is the compassion meditation or metta meditation. A compassion meditation is where you, instead of typical mindfulness where you're letting things arise and you're non-judgmentally watching them, metta meditation, compassion meditation, is where you actively generate feelings of love and well-wishing for individuals and for yourself. And you start with, people close to you, and you go to people that you are neutral about, then you go to people that you hate, and you generate these real feelings of love and compassion. And the more you practice that, the more it becomes automatic, and the more it's a concentration practice in itself, because you have to focus to do this. It's very hard to stay focused on feeling love and compassion and imagining the person happy and wishing them well authentically. To, be able to do that, you have to practice. But what that is it's a kind of a hypnosis. You're teaching your mind that the default state should be one of love and well wishes, and understanding that everybody's coming from their own kind of suffering, and you're wishing their suffering to be less. Now, when you turn that meditation on yourself, that's the most powerful version of it, because you cannot forgive other people. You cannot be good to other people. You cannot love other people until you forgive, love, and accept yourself. And that's the hardest thing for people to do, especially those of us in this profession of healthcare, where we are the most self-defeating, self-hating people on the planet, right? And that meditation is powerful. And I think it's more powerful than any hypnosis you can do, but I'm biased. So what do we have?
Natalie Schicks is asking how she should get started with meditation when her mind's always jumping around.
How should we get started with meditation when your mind's always jumping around? You noticed your mind's already jumping around, right? So you've already meditated. You've already gotten started with meditation because you watched your mind. Most people aren't even aware that their mind is an asshole, that their mind is constantly jumping around, that their mind does not necessarily have their best interests in mind. It's trying. Remember, your mind isn't even one thing. It's a system of sub-minds all competing for your attention. Squirrel, 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 squirrel. Oh, dinner? Oh, shoot, I shouldn't have said that to that one person. Oh, crap, I have to do my taxes. You're a terrible person. Why are you so fat? That's your mind. It's an asshole. It's like a radio station full of assholes on constant scan, and you can never get it to stop scanning. So that's your mind already. How can I meditate when my mind's doing that? You already have by recognizing your mind is doing that. The first times you meditate, you sit in silence with your eyes closed, trying to focus on your breath. And you realize very rapidly that you can't do it. And that in itself is an epiphany. And that in itself is a reason to do it, right? Because I'm telling you, as someone who was you, absolutely had the same problem. I have the craziest monkey mind in the world. Keeps me up at night. When you practice and you set an intention and you're like, I'm going to follow the breath. Oh, I got lost. Okay. And the way, by the way, Mind Illuminated has a great chapter on this. How do you redirect the mind when it's monkey mind? That's the term for it, monkey mind. It's just all over the place. First of all, you cannot force yourself. You can't force your mind to do anything. The more you turn on the screws, the more crazy ass monkey is going to come out of the box, right? So the first thing you do is you watch it and you go, okay, I'm going to set an intention. I'm going to try to follow the breath as much as I can. And I'm going to set a second intention. When I forget and get lost in thought, and when I notice that I've forgotten and I've been lost in thought, the noticing that you forgot is the meditation in that particular part of your practice. Recognizing that you've been lost in thought is a moment where you, instead of going, shit, I'm such an asshole, I can't even focus, I'd forgotten about the breath. The way the Mind Illuminated, the way Yates in the book describes it, is you go, good job. You are woke as fuck. You recognized that you were lost. Pat yourself on the back. That positive reinforcement trains your subminds to be vigilant for when it's lost. And the more you do that with positive reinforcement, the mind goes, I did good, and keeps catching when you're lost in thought. Pretty soon, you become pretty fucking good at it. You can follow the breath like a laser. And when you're able to do that, the rest of the mind still spits stuff at you, but you start to deflect it. And when you start doing that, the rest of the mind starts to give up, and you get something called unification of mind, where things are really quiet. And in those moments of stillness, your chance of having insight into the nature of how your mind works is much greater. Again, some people never attain that, but they get good enough to see what their mind is doing, develop this peripheral awareness of mind state. It's called metacognitive introspective awareness. Being able to watch the mind as the mind does stuff. And the way that Yates describes it in the book is really what meditation is, in this style of meditation, is watching the mind watch the breath. That's what you're doing. So you see the breath here, you feel it, but then you're watching what the rest of the mind is doing, and you're vigilant. Oh, there's a little distraction. Oh, I recognized it early. Oh, let's just double our focus on the breath, right? So it's absolutely fascinating the way it pans out. And I was with you. I had no ability to do it early on. What we got?
Arcana is asking, would you ever consider or approve the usage of low-dose psilocybin or LSD while meditating? Would it assist in the introspection?
So we're talking about microdosing of psychedelics. And let's be completely transparent. I've done psychedelics mostly in college. I've never microdosed psychedelics. And there's a lot of people talking about this. And a lot of people are talking about this in reference to meditative practice. So could low-dose psychedelics that many people in the Silicon Valley use as a mind-enhancing, like a creativity enhancer? And again, there's not a lot of data. Like, we don't have data on this because it's still illegal. But could it be an enhancement of meditation? And Sam Harris recently, who is an adept meditator and also recently did a very high-dose psilocybin experience, feels that they may be quite complementary. So I am all for legalizing those drugs for therapeutic use, especially with a guide, studying the shit out of them, because they are transformative agents. They really are. I'll be fully transparent with you guys. I would not ever have thought to try to meditate. I would not ever have thought to, that vistas of awareness and consciousness and reality are on offer had I not, tried LSD and psilocybin in college at Berkeley. Duh. And the first time I did LSD. That was the first psychedelic I ever did. And I'm a kid who never drank in high school, never smoked weed, nothing until I turned 18 and went to Berkeley and tried. I remember the first time I smoked a joint, or no, it wasn't a joint. It was out of a bong. Some kid had it in their dorm and they were like, you should try it. And I'm like, but Nancy Reagan says, just say no. I was launched into a different dimension because my mind was completely naive to it. And I had an experience where I was telling people, I think I see the fourth dimension. You know, it's total stoner talk. Oh, man, I see the fourth. The first time I've ever been high, I was walking around the dorms at Berkeley, Putnam Hall, telling people that I could see the fourth dimension. And I was convinced it was true, right? So it started with that. It's always a gateway. And the first time I tried LSD, I remember when I came down, I thought, aha, I get it now. This makes so much more sense. This life and this reality makes so much more sense. And I feel like I'm a different person after having done it for the better. And people who haven't tried it or had that experience are missing something fundamental. And so I think psychedelics are an important agent to help open people's minds. And I'm not saying go out and do psychedelics. I'm not saying that. You need a guide. They need to be studied. They need to be legal where all this shit, all the caveats. Fuck it. Go do some mushrooms. I'm kidding. Am I? So I forget even what I was saying, but the point being that, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins were having a conversation. Richard Dawkins, famous evolutionary biologist. And Harris just kept asking him, so you've never done psychedelics, you don't meditate. And Sam took him through a meditation and Dawkins was just like, fuck this is dumb. Literally. He said, I don't get it. I hated that. 5 minutes of silence and focusing on the breath. What's the point? And Harris said, you need to do psychedelics because they'll open your mind to what's on offer, what's possible, and the understandings, of your own mind and the vistas available to you. And I think that's, to some extent, it's quite true. So where are we at?
Nguyen Nguyen asks, can you go into more detail about how to use meditation to combat ADHD?
So ADHD is a fascinating question because you would think it would be a contraindication. In other words, it would be something that you can't meditate with because the whole point is you can't pay attention. And the idea is that meditation is paying attention to paying attention. It's introspective awareness, right? Well, Yates talks about this in the book, The Mind Illuminated. ADHD makes it more difficult to focus on the breath and to train attention. But it's all the more reason to focus on the breath and train attention. So you can still absolutely do it. I had somebody in the comments leave a message on a thing I did the other day saying, thank you so much for recommending The Mind Illuminated. I have ADHD and it's been transformative. There's your answer. So and that may have been you that left the comment, but because I don't know, I didn't see the name. The ability to watch what your mind is doing and pay attention to paying attention is something that can profoundly help everybody, and maybe especially people with ADHD. And I don't have specific expertise in that, so I can't give you like particular practices, right? But I bet you they exist. And I bet you that a lot of adept meditators have been diagnosed with ADHD. It would not surprise me at all. What do we got?
Jan Kelsey asks, can you describe the meditative states you've experienced from the most basic to the most profound and what effect they've had on you along your meditative journey?
What an interesting question. Wow. Okay. So the simplest meditative experiences, and it depends on the type of meditation. All right. So let me hit some highlights. A simple meditative experience that makes you go, oh, wow, the mind is capable of tremendous concentration, is when you get in a flow state. And in the Buddhist literature, these flow states are called jhanas. It's a kind of a absorption concentration. So you focus on the breath. Pretty soon things start to recede away. The breath is the only thing there, and you're witnessing it in this microscopic detail. And time and space and location of the breath start to disappear. And what you experience is just this vibrating energy pattern, you can't localize it. It's just everything that you are is this vibrating energy pattern going in and out in a regular rhythm. And you can experience it in such detail and with such stability that you're just like, wow, I had no idea I could do that. And it's a kind of a simple absorption. Then that can be a doorway, and this can happen at any stage in meditation. It doesn't have to happen to very experienced meditators. It happened to me early on. You can get these experiences of bodily sensations that are really quite remarkable. So the body starts to feel like a single globe of sensation, and it's very blissful. It's like a blissful, resonating energy. It's hard to describe. And your eyes are closed and you're just breathing and you just feel this and you can stay in that state. And it's tremendously enjoyable. The problem is people become attached to those states. They try to hunt them down. And that in itself is antithetical to the idea of meditation. Meditation is watching what arises and accepting it as such. It turns out that's something that can arise when the mind gets silent and more unified. You can get those very blissful states. And in fact, in the later stages of meditation in the book, you cultivate those states as a way of stabilizing concentration and quieting and unifying the mind. So I've had those transiently, sometimes more predictably, those kind of states. Now, there are states, so those are like kind of fun, like really interesting, like, and pleasant. So like you come away just with a smile on your face, like that was really enjoyable, right? Now you can have contralateral, you can have the opposite. You can have very powerful negative states. And I think that's interesting too. And it's mostly emotional states. So very powerful emotions can just arise. So those are interesting, right? Especially if you're able to recognize them as such. The other really fascinating thing in meditative states are pain. So let's say you have chronic pain or you have acute pain. So I have neck pain or say some knee pain, something like that. It can arise in meditation, and there's a chapter on how to deal with pain in this book, right? So how do you deal with it? You make it an object of your meditation. You focus on it. And you focus on it as a pattern of energy instead of as the suffering associated with it. Like, oh my God, I'm hurting. Something's wrong with me. That's suffering. What pain is a pattern of vibration of sensation, right? And it has a valence associated with it. Good, bad, ugly, right? And it tends to be bad. So you can look at that too and go, oh, unpleasant, vibrating, burning, sharp, persistent. As you focus on the pain, even a pain you've had for a long time, watch what happens. It will get bigger, it will get smaller, it will start to modulate, and then it will disappear. And it will often only disappear if you're not thinking, I hope this pain disappears. You accept it, you explore it, you understand it, you're mindful of it, and watch it dissolve like all mind-created substrate. It's transient. I thought that was amazing. And the last piece I want to tell you is the non-duality, the idea that what is seen, what is felt, what is heard, what is thought are not separate from the thinker or the feeler or the hearer. They're one thing, which is awareness. And you can actually intuitively feel this during meditation, during certain types of mindful of non-vipassana meditation. And I've talked about Locke, Kelly, and others. You can feel like you are awareness as a field, and your body simply arises as a set of sensations and vibrations and little thoughts floating in the air that are no different than sounds. They sound like words. They're just here, right? And it's all made of just awareness. And you can have those experiences. Those are kind of non-dual, one taste sort of type, to use the old phrases, experiences where you're not different than everything that is. And there's no subject and object. And those are ultimately some of the highest experiences you can have. They're very hard to stably have, but you can practice them through little small glimpses throughout the day. And everything from just pretending you have no head, which we'll talk about another time, to, more Tibetan type of practices. So those are profound practices, and they can eliminate suffering in a moment. because instead of identifying with this body and I am this, I am this, and the body is just arising within me, and it doesn't harm me. Like a mirror isn't affected by what it reflects, right? It's unperturbable, and you can have those experiences. I think those are the highest goal of meditative practice. What we got?
All right, so we have one last question
Yes.
from Mindy Meeks. Can you describe how you set up yourself and the environment you're in when you're doing meditation?
How do you set up the environment when you're meditating? And this is a good way to go out, because this will give you a call to action. So the best thing you can do when you start is, and look, adept meditators can meditate anywhere, but you need to pick a spot that means something to you because it has a certain valence, right? And you need to keep consistent. So when you start, so pick a spot that you think is kind of generally quiet, generally free of distraction, because in the early times, you will be very distracted. And what I do is, and what I did in early days is I would put in noise canceling headphones, because that would eliminate as much auditory distraction as I could. And I would sit in a chair. I happen to like a chair. And the key thing is you probably want to be upright if you can, because otherwise you'll tend to fall asleep. And we'll talk about dullness and sleeping another time. But being upright keeps the energy up. It forces you to stay erect like this. And that can focus and keep your energy and your mind high, right? So find that spot. Be comfortable. You shouldn't be in pain. You should set up when you start without pain and without discomfort. And ideally sitting upright with cushions, whatever, back support, whatever it takes, and have it be a quiet place. And if you have to enforce the quiet through headphones, that's fine too. Use a timer. You can do guided meditations. You could start with using the book and just practice, be diligent, set a schedule, set the environment to encourage you to continue your practice. Like anything, it's like losing weight. If you're surrounded by boxes of ice cream, it's going to be very hard to lose weight, right? So engineer your environment a little bit. So how many do we have any super PAC people commenting? Mindy Meeks is one.
We did. Jody Chance, Risa Doobie, Mindy Meeks, Don Pilliam. Risa did a couple.
Yep.
A few. There we are. Jody Chance, Ashley Stewart.
Ashley.
Some
Jody.
of these were just comments.
That's great.
Yeah,
So
somebody just sent you $5 to win.
Thank you.
She said that she can't subscribe, but she's so thankful for your kind of talks.
What a kind thing to say, and I appreciate your support. You don't have to subscribe or be a supporter to support us. Just subscribe, share our videos, and if you're listening on the podcast right now, if we put this out on podcast, subscribe and leave a review, because it helps us a lot. You guys do know we're a podcast, so you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, any of these platforms that you like, Stitcher. Go and subscribe, because it helps us go up the rankings. I love you guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Victoria for reading us some comments so that I can pay attention to y'all. And we out. Peace. Now you got to hit that little live button.
Oh.
Not sure how it works.
Here we go. Bye, guys.
So long.